And then Matt, if you would lead us in the pledge.
Okay.
Good evening. I'm Paul Elgin from First Presbyterian Church. I've spent the last week and a half in Seattle and getting my daughter through orientation for the University of Washington. Exciting and scary time. Seattle right now is covered with a thick mantle of smoke, not from the wildfires of Northern California, but from the fires of British Columbia. And it reminds me that, yes, we have our challenges here of heat and drought, but we are really one family, afflicted by different challenges equally, even people from different nations. So tonight I'd like to pray for the firefighters, for the first responders, all those in harm's way who provide for our safety. Pray with me, please. Father God, be with those who place themselves in danger to ensure our safety. Help us to be supportive of them and aware of their sacrifices, whether of life and limb or time away from family and friends. Be with all those who serve, police, fire, emergency personnel, and military. Be with our elected women and men that they can make good decisions for them and for us, that we can live in peace and justice and righteousness. Be present in our voting booths as we make choices and guide our choices to reflect your will. In all things, let us give glory to you, God, that your will for our lives might be reflected in the image you have stamped on each one of us. In the name of Jesus Christ we pray. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you, Matt. First item on, or second item on here is the roll call. Gloria, let the record show that everyone is present.
So noted.
Mayor McFarland, as far as minutes regarded tonight, we have move approval of the City Council regular meeting minutes from August 6th, and that we accept for the record the Police and Personnel Retirement Board minutes from June 1st, the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board minutes from June 7th, the Board of Appeals from November 8th, 2017, and the Casa Grande Youth Commission from May 12th, 2018, as they're presented.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Minutes are approved. Item D, claims against the city.
Mayor McFarland, I move for approval of claims against the city for August 1st through 14th as presented.
Second?
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, claims are approved. No special presentations tonight. So the next item on our agenda is G, which is consent agenda. Yes. Did I?
Meeting agenda approval.
Oh, blew right by it. Thank you, Larry. Does anybody have any changes to the meeting agenda? None from staff? Second. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Now moving on to item G. That's why you're all out there. All items listed with an asterisk are considered routine matters and will be enacted by one motion, one roll call vote of the council. There'll be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member or member of the public so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and considered in its normal sequence of the agenda.
Mayor McFarland, I move for adoption of passage of the consent agenda as presented. Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Gloria, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember McBride.
Yes.
Councilmember Fitzgibbon.
Yes.
Councilmember Cortson.
Yes.
Councilmember Varela.
Yes.
Councilmember Powell.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Herman.
Yes.
Mayor McFarland.
Yes. All right, this is one time this evening we'll have a public comment, so I'll open the floor to anyone who would like to speak to the council. I would appreciate it if you keep your comments to 3 minutes, and if there is something that you want to say and there is a need for follow-up, we'll have to do it later since it's not an agendized item, but you're free to come to the podium. Anyone? Okay, seeing none, then I'll close the floor, and we'll move to the first item, I-1. Mr. Public Works.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This action is the authorization of a change order to the contract for the Community Recreation Center project. This will provide for the construction of Pier Road from Quartzon to O'Neill Drive, which you can see a visual on your screen. It's basically the west half-street improvement of Pier from Quartzon to O'Neill. Staff recommends the Mayor and Council authorize the City Manager to execute a change order in an amount not to exceed $700,000, which includes a $100,000 owner's contingency to the contract with Hayden Building to provide for this construction. The original scope of the project, the Recreation Center project, did not include or encompass significant improvement to Pier. There was minimal improvement directly in front of the property itself, and that was it. As the GMP, or guaranteed maximum price for the contract, was being developed, there was some discussion about broadening that scope. At that time, no design work had been done for the roadway, so $800,000 was projected for that work, and that was what was included in the GMP that was then, brought before you for approval. Since that time, we've been able to almost complete the design and have found a much more significant scope of work is going to be required for that. So, therefore, what we're looking for is a change order to that contract to provide for the full construction of Pier from Quartzon to O'Neill. Total projected quantities now call for about $1.5 million worth of construction. That includes $100,000, in contingency for relocation of ED2 facilities that recently were found to be in conflict and will require substantial relocation effort and substantial cost for that. That's where the additional $100,000 is. If you'd like to discuss the details of what the work will be, again, it's the half-street construction on the west side. We're also going to construct medians from Quartzon to O'Neill to try and control and limit traffic and avoid conflicts and accidents. We're also installing sidewalk on the west side from Quartzon to the rec center, as well as street lights. I guess that kind of covers it all. I'm sure you all have plenty of questions, so why don't we just get right to it.
Terry? So is there going to be some redesign of the Quartzon Peart interchange also?
At Quartzon and Peart, the southwest corner primarily is what's going to be reconstructed.
That signal pole needs to be moved?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that whole southwest corner will be brought to essentially a full developed corner.
Okay. What ED2 infrastructure is there? The only things I've seen are some poles that have no power lines on them.
That would be to the south of the site, I believe.
Right.
Those poles, even though it appears they may not have ED2 on them, there are some that have Cox communication on them, and we're in discussion that those may need to be relocated as part of the project. The biggest piece of it is known conflict is at the intersection itself.
Okay.
When we have to relocate the traffic signal, that's in direct conflict with their current overhead.
Okay.
And more than likely we're going to have to underground that by a directional bore, so quite expensive.
Are there going to be some acceleration lanes or anything in front of the...
Dwayne can correct me if I'm wrong, but yes, I believe that we have a deceleration lane into the rec center and then a little bit of an acceleration lane out.
Yeah, that's correct.
I have a set of conceptual design plans if you want to see them afterwards. We can pass those around.
It had been suggested to me that that amount of money is not really expected to be totally used, and anything that wasn't used would be returned to the fund. Is that correct?
It absolutely is correct. Forgive me for not mentioning that.
Yeah.
Yes, there's still unknowns
Right.
in this, and we'd really rather ask for a little more
You need
now
more, yeah.
than have to come back to you again later. But yes, absolutely, any of the money that is approved under this action that's not used for this construction goes back into the bucket it came from.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Was there any thought given to continue that lane past O'Neill all the way down to Cottonwood?
There has been discussion. There is a conceptual plan to do that. There's been some discussion, I believe, about continuing the design so that when that does happen, be it by the city or by a developer, it would all be consistent and continuous. I think it really just comes down to funding and what is available and
Because Larry, we
ready to
talked
be
about not doing these chop-up jobs, where we have the whole thing completed. We've discussed that once before. Was that not, I know I understand the money, I get that, but we also had talked about trying to make sure we complete a section, don't finish it halfway in the middle of the block, if you will.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, your point is actually well taken and certainly have had some dialogue with it. Unfortunately, we find ourselves in a scenario with this roadway where it is built like that today, and really the driver behind that is that you end up with development on one side of the road and vacant land on the other side, and so our codes have required the developers to ultimately make those improvements as part that would run concurrent with the development happening itself. And so as we looked at this segment of roadway, besides meeting the minimum requirements that were necessary for the rec center to be able to get traffic in and out, we really took a specific eye on safety, and which is one of the reasons why we've decided to go all the way up to the Pearton Courtson intersection and run it to O'Neill. And Mayor, I will tell you that we've had, as Terry has pointed out, we've had some discussions about the potential of completing that roadway and the potential of utilizing similar financing sources. We're using development impact fees to do this. When we do that, ultimately the developer is somewhat relieved of having to bring that infrastructure in as part of their development, and the land directly on the west side is vacant today. And so we've talked about with some of the methodology changes that we've made with our development impact fees ultimately allow us to collect a development impact fee from those individuals that somewhat align with this. So
Because that land has been sold.
it's been sold, but it's not developed. There's not been any improvements made on it.
We talked to that owner of that land?
I don't know that we've had specific dialogue with the owner of that land. We have reached out on a couple of occasions in an attempt to have dialogue. I don't think we've had a specific face-to-face, have we, Dwayne, with the owners of the west side, of south of the O'Neill Road?
We haven't yet.
Right.
We've been working with the planning department that when they start doing their development and getting moving, we hope to work with them on our design of Peart and what they're going to do.
Because I know, wasn't that one of the corners where there was potentially going to be some rezoning for apartments?
Yes, that's true.
So if we talk to them, I mean, the reason I'm asking is because when you do this project, it's a lot easier and cheaper for everybody concerned if it's all done at the same time, not if it's piecemeal.
Yeah, no doubt.
Would they bring some money to the table, though, when we have to do it?
That's what I'm thinking.
There's a potential that will happen, and ultimately Dwayne's speaking to it, and I know that Mr. Tice and his team, there have been some recent activities and some interest in that property south, going through some development work, and certainly we'll be having some dialogue with them about the potential of making that capital investment up front. But as we sit here today, we just have not gotten that commitment. And so, to Terry's point, we ultimately have come back because of the timing and the need to get this roadway work started so that it's done concurrent with the rec center. We're coming tonight, and if it looks like we can get some type of an agreement and/or find funding to be able to extend the rest of that roadway, we likely will be coming back before mayor and council and asking.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to torpedo it. I'm just trying to say, let's look at it. I'd ask you to make sure we go talk to these people before, and give them an opportunity, because they may say, yeah, I'm in.
Right.
I will say I have been talking with their engineers, not the developer themselves, but with the engineers. So we're starting dialogue with them.
Okay.
And I think that's my concern too, is, it is a lot of money, and it kind of surprises me that we're at this point, because it seems as though this would have come up in our traffic studies. I mean, this is a big deal. I mean, it seems obvious to me that there was going to have to be some improvement. So that's why I'm just kind of curious how all of a sudden, it's here in urgency mode, it seems like, right? It seems as though, and so I just want to make sure that, why are we here? And then in the future, what are we doing to make sure we're getting that information ahead of time so we can plan for it and not piecemealing, pieces or whatever, so planning in the future.
Well, I think an argument can be made. This has also been a learning experience for staff. I think that there were two separate groups, each thinking the other was covering all of it and planning for it. And it wasn't until this really came to fruition that was discovered to be not the case. So yes, the point is very well taken. I assure you the next major project of this nature, that will be
And we all know, I mean,
considered
that intersection there is, even without the community center, something had to be done there. So, I mean, it doesn't surprise me, and so if we're going to use impact fees and do whatever we have to do, but just kind of surprised me that.
What if we don't do it? I guess what's the worst case? What's going to happen if we don't do it and we wait for that land to get developed and we have that developer share those costs?
Well, I think we need to do this.
Okay.
Honestly, I think that now is the time to do it.
Okay.
The short answer is we could probably get by for a little while, but
All right.
it will be painful. There will be
Okay.
problems in the traffic pattern and in the levels of service of the area.
Yeah.
I think that in short, it would be the wise thing to do.
Okay.
I think you would be regretting it the day that thing opened.
Okay.
And Mr. Mayor, members of the council, if I can come back and address Councilwoman Fitzgibbon's question as well. This roadway likely needs some improvement today. I don't know that the data would show that it would need immediate improvement, but if we were just building the rec center and ultimately making the improvements for that particular segment, we wouldn't need to necessarily make the improvements at Courts and Peart. Right? I mean, so there would be some level of improvements, but not what I would consider to be the full build-out. And so if I can come back and address Councilwoman Fitzgibbon's question, a part of this is, to Terry's point, that when we originally started the project from the rec center, we budgeted the amount of improvements that were necessary to meet the general code, the safety, those types of things. And as we begin to look at it, we essentially said, we need to do more. Otherwise, we're going to end up with situations, traffic situations here. We're going to end up with problems that we're going to be trying to fix subsequently. And so, as we begin to study it and take a more broader look at it, that really began to drive the scope to be larger than it is. And so, yes, can staff ultimately end up in the future taking a look at a more broader spectrum? The answer is yes. Part of what was driving this is the budget, and we did not want to put an unfair impact on the rec center budget because that would have then driven down what we could have built there as well. And so it's kind of been this back and forth game, if you will, as we've evaluated exactly what needed to be done. And when we determined that there was some development impact fee money that was available pre-2012 that has to be expended, that had been reallocated, we ultimately said, let's spend it here.
Just one more comment. the impact fees won't happen unless somebody decides to develop that property. And so if it's just a roadway sitting there, we're going to pay for something that somebody else is going to enjoy as taxpayers. If we wait and somebody comes and wants to develop, and I think it's good to check with the people and see if they're interested in that, that brings the impact fees to play, but without that, there's no impact fee money for it.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Mr. Powell is somewhat correct on that from a development impact fee perspective. There is a change, particularly for the pre-2012 development impact fees. Ultimately, at that point in time, our methodology would outline the actual improvements, the segments of roadway that were going to be built. And so we would essentially end up using our development impact fee money to spend it on those roadways. If we were going to make a change, we'd have to modify our IIP and so on and so forth. The new development impact fee that the mayor and council has started that process and we're proceeding with, we've had a change in methodology, particularly on the transportation element, that allows us to move where the improvements are made. We're collecting the development impact fee, but we're actually we're focusing those revenue streams, that income stream, potentially along with development in the higher density areas and the areas where we have some of the roads that go from 4-lane down to 3-lane. And so I do think the change in methodology will allow us will certainly help us.
Larry, who does the change? Is it the city or is that an ordinance?
No, as part of the methodology that the mayor and council has approved, the IIP, that methodology has changed and we're moving forward. And so ultimately what can transpire is that we can have discussions with the developer and look at developing what I consider to be a more equitable, a motivating discussion with the developer to come in and make their capital investment today.
Did you have a comment?
I did. In the past, haven't we done the road improvements and build them back at a later time on some pieces so that we can complete these roads?
We do have a payback provision in our city code that can be executed, and my recollection is the only one that we've ever considered using that on in the most recent years is Cottonwood Lane.
Mm-hmm. And we did have that vacant corner just right there on Cottonwood Lane.
But we didn't end up doing that, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
We didn't end up, we talked.
There is a state statute that allows you to do that. It is fairly restrictive, and when we did Cottonwood Lane, we did have those conversations about, whether to do that. But based on what the methodology was, the fact that we had gotten some of the right-of-way, donated, we were purchasing others, we had elected at that time not to try to do the payback. It is somewhat limited as well because you can only do it for like 10 years, I believe is what the statute is. If they don't develop within 10 years, then they get their road for free. The people that develop in 9 years have to pay it, and so ultimately you can look at those. But you're going to have a hard time though when your code is saying for some of this stuff directly adjacent to the rec center, that's our responsibility. Right. So we're the developer of that. So that's not a piece that we would be recouping from the other side. It would be only as you continued it down to Cottonwood. Right. If you paid for it, you could potentially do a payback. But as council considers the new IIPs, those are all things you'd want to look at and determine what impact fees might be available at the time, what the developer would be able to do. So I think that you'd have to evaluate that as you go and do the new IIP. We just had the public hearing on it. The council hasn't adopted the new IIP yet.
But in addition, we would have to come up with the money one way or the other to do that, even if we get paid back. But really, I'm glad that we're going this farther than what we need, because I'm not a traffic engineer, but that intersection is horrible. And it's always a time of day when I imagine that people are going to be going and coming from the rec center and work and everything else. So it's going to help a lot to have that total, a big piece of improvement more than just the rec center. So I'm glad we're doing that.
All right.
Yeah, I just have a comment, and I appreciate Larry's clarification on it, because like Lisa, I was a little bit surprised. And, when you think of $800,000, you think of somebody came up with that number somehow. And then when you go, by the way, we need this much more, that is a lot. And I think that the safety and security of our citizens on the roadway are our most important, that we're looking at. But when we're looking at the rec center and people say that's a lot of money, they're associating this with the rec center. And so I think that we do have to be cautious of how we get that message out. So that's my own.
Had we, say for instance, had we figured it was 1.5 million up front, that money still would have had to have come from somewhere? Because it wouldn't have come from your original bonds and everything, right? I mean,
It's unlikely that we would have been recommending that we would be spending $1.5 million of the bond money to pave the roadway,
right.
which is ultimately how we approach this. And so we would have been looking at highway user funds or half-cent county tax funds and or development impact fees.
So either way, something, it would have had to have happened anyway. Is that-
We would have certainly gone through some level of evaluation to determine exactly what improvements we needed. And quite frankly, part of why we're dealing with it the way we're dealing with it is that we allowed the budget, the money that we had to drive the scope of the project. I don't think that there's any staff person here today that wouldn't tell you that their preference would be that we put a 4-lane road all the way into Cottonwood. That would be the best case scenario here. But when you're kind of backing into that, for a lack of better words, into a budget, you ultimately are having to define the scope, and that's essentially what we did. We essentially looked at the money that we had in the rec center project. We knew that we couldn't pave this amount of road with that budget, and so we ultimately began to look at other alternatives to get as much of the roadway improved as we could.
Well, on the good side, there's 6-foot bike lane, so that's going to be very nice. Happy with that, so it's good.
Dead ends at O'Neill.
Yeah.
All right, well, I still would like staff to at least reach out to the property owners and give them an opportunity to participate if they
Absolutely.
would like. Okay. All right, then can I get an ordinance, please, Gloria?
Ordinance number 3052.1, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Casa Grande, Arizona, approving amendment number 1 to the city's agreement with Hayden Building Corporation for construction of the Community Recreation Center to provide for additional funding for road construction improvements to Peart Road from Courtson Road to O'Neill Drive, authorizing expenditure of public funds in an amount not to exceed $700,000, and authorizing the execution of a contract.
Mayor McFarland, I move approval of ordinance number 3052.1 as presented.
Second. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Gloria, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember McBride.
Yes.
Councilmember Fitzgibbon.
Yes.
Councilmember Courtson.
Yes.
Councilmember Varela.
Yes.
Councilmember Powell.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Herman.
Yes.
Mayor McFarland.
Yes. Okay, item I-2.
Okay, hopefully this one's a little quicker. This action is a request to purchase 2 2018 Ford F-150 pickups and 1 2018 Ford Escape from Santan Ford for the police department. Staff is recommending the approval of purchase of these 3 vehicles from Santan through cooperative use of state contract ADSP 017-166124 in an amount not to exceed $85,511. 2 of these vehicles are going to be replacement units for existing. Those units have reached the end of their useful service life. Staff has reviewed those and does agree that they do need to be replaced. To find the replacements for the procurement, staff looked at putting it out to bid versus cooperative use of that state contract. The state contract, in our opinion, is advantageous to the city for a couple of reasons. One, the pricing that's offered through that contract is fairly competitive and reasonable. We don't believe that we can necessarily beat that, but in order to utilize that contract allows us to purchase model year 2018s. Otherwise, we would probably have to go out to bid for 2019s, which will carry a higher price tag. So we believe that the cooperative use of that contract is very advantageous for us. So we've reached out to Santan, who holds that contract with the state, and obtained price proposals for those vehicles in accordance with the contract. So for those, the 2 F-150 vehicles. The total price for purchase is going to be $63,902 for those two. Those, I believe, are replacing the chief's vehicle and a deputy chief. And the Super Crew cab pickup is the vehicle that they've identified to replace their current units. Those two units, because of the use, are only going to require minimal upfit, not the typical patrol package. So for the two vehicles, the upfit is minimal at $6,400. Although that is not included in the action, we're just trying to present to you again, as we've sort of been doing, what the total cost to roll these out on the street is, so that you guys are aware that it's not just the $58,000 or whatever. The total projected for these is that $63,000. I'm sorry, the $70,302, including the $6,400. Those items for upfit, the lights, what have you, those will be purchased either through our existing contract with MHQ for upfitting or through procurement through the policy or in accordance with the policy. It's projected that PD and fleet staff will do any of the upfit for those two vehicles. So since I've kind of chopped this up, let me recap. The purchase price for the two pickups was $63,902, and then $6,400 for the upfit of the two, for the total of $70,302 for the two pickups. The third vehicle that we're talking about is a 2018 Ford Escape, a small SUV. This vehicle is new to the fleet and is intended for the victim services unit. That way they don't have to put a victim in the back of a patrol car, which for any of you that have been there, not a very comfortable place. So they're looking for a more, as I've termed it, a civilian vehicle. That's the intent of this unit. This unit will have no upfit, therefore doesn't require anything other than the vehicle purchase, basically, and that's $21,609. So the total for these three vehicles, the $85,511 is what is being approved under this action for the contract with Santan, but an additional $6,440 for upfit for a total cost of $91,911. And those funds are all available in the replacement and new item budget line items that are listed. Any questions?
Pretty darn good buy on those pickups.
I haven't been shopping yet, but my understanding is yes, that's a pretty good price.
Yeah, exactly.
Any other questions?
I talked to some people about this during the CFP process. We talked about this victim services car, and I agree totally with the concept and the reasoning behind it. We really need to have it. I was concerned about having an additional vehicle in our fleet. You know, I asked city manager, we checked all the other vehicles in our fleet for a citizen, for a civilian vehicle, and he assured me that we had, and that we had the money. So I mean, I'm not in favor of this, but and the price at $21,000 for a brand new car again is pretty cheap. It's a pretty good deal for a car like that. So I just want to be assured that we checked everything first before we went down this road.
To my knowledge, yes, staff looked at any other vehicle that would be suitable for this, but didn't find anything that really would be adequate and appropriate for that use.
Yeah, $31,000 pickups is pretty good.
Yep.
And Mr. Mayor, members of the council, if I can just kind of build on that for the response, Terry's response to Mr. Herman. Ultimately, there were a couple other variables, and Terry is correct. As we have adopted the vehicle efficiency program, and we have officers that are taking home these vehicles, we have less vehicles that are sitting available for use. And so ultimately, as we begin to evaluate this particular unit, and I know that the mayor and council heard bits and pieces of the need for the addition of this unit as part of a study session when the chief and his team had talked a little bit about some of the services that are being provided. We ultimately began to look for financing or funding again and found that we had some pre-2012 development impact fee money that we ultimately could utilize to acquire this new vehicle, and needed to spend that before 2020, and so we've elected to propose a new vehicle to the Mayor and Council this evening. It will, just like any other vehicle, will go into our vehicle replacement program. The chief has assured me that that under this new program that we're in fact extending their useful life, and I envision that this is one of those vehicles that we can get 8+ years out of. So just a lot of reasons why we would buy something new here.
But, and can I just follow up to my question? Thank you, because that puts me at ease of buying. I just wanted to make sure that we had checked all those things. And is it going to be managed so that we know that it's just going to be used for the proper purpose of the victims? Because I fully believe that we need a dedicated vehicle for them. So again, we're not throwing someone who's been through one of the worst experiences of their life in the back of a police car to go to a place. So.
And Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I don't want to speak for the chief. I don't. I'll ask him. Can I, Chief? Speak to I can assure you that this vehicle will be, it's going to be an unmarked vehicle. Obviously, it's going to be a civilian vehicle, as Terry has pointed out, so that it will have limited functionality in patrol use. And so it will be there. It will be available when we have these types of situations that we need to use it. And I feel very confident that it will be used specifically for those reasons.
Good. Thank you.
Larry, what will happen to the two vehicles we're replacing?
We traditionally will sell those at an auction. We have an agreement with a couple of auction houses up in the valley. We typically will evaluate the vehicle and determine whether or not it would be advantageous for us to replace an existing retained vehicle, a vehicle that has already been moved out of our fleet that we've retained for a specific function. I don't believe that either of these vehicles are going to fit that bill, but ultimately, if we were to retain it, we would be disposing of the one that we're taking out of the fleet. So there's always one, as we're adding one, there's always one going to auction.
Okay. Lisa?
And I'm glad you brought up that question. That was one that I had. But, every time these come up, of course, I get concerned about buying new vehicles. And, well, of course, the local thing, but I've kind of come to the understanding, that we go with the cheapest bid. But, the whole, the standard of useful life. I mean, are we just going through the book and it says so many miles, we're getting a new car? I know many of you go to other cities and pay attention. I never paid attention to this before. I was on city council, but I go to cities, and like Chicago, just came back, and their vehicles are beat up, those police vehicles. And so, of course I look, and, we have these nice SUVs now. We have the BMW motorcycles, and, I just want to make sure, when we're looking at is it just a number we're looking at, as far as years, mileage? Are we extending that life to make sure that we're really getting the maximum? Because if we can stretch it out, we need to really stretch it out. But I understand if there's maintenance and, all the cost that goes involved. But can you kind of give me a little recap again on these standards for useful life?
So the standards basically are the lowest level criteria. Age of the vehicle, number of years in service, and miles on the vehicle. That's when it comes on the radar. At that point, staff investigates the maintenance history of the vehicle. How much has it cost to operate to date? And what is the operating trend? Is it getting more expensive every year? Are we putting more and more money into it every year? Also the O&M cost of it. Fuel, preventive maintenance, those sort of things. What is the most advantageous? And those vehicles are always discussed, particularly with the department or division that owns them. And yes, when staff doesn't believe it's time to replace a vehicle, our fleet staff argues not to. And when it is appropriate, they say yes, it's time to move on. So it is more than just, hey, it's X number of years old or has X number of miles. That's why we have a number of vehicles that are probably a lot older and than what other municipalities might have. But yes, we do look at a whole lot more than that.
And looking at the trends of which vehicles are best to, maintain, those, whatever they go through?
That primarily comes into recommendations for what we're going to purchase for the replacement or for the new vehicle. We are definitely trying to get into a more standardized fleet, if you will. That's why the action contains the Ford F-150s. We have a number of those in our fleet, so if we're going to go to a pickup, that would be the best way to do it. It's consistent training, stock of parts, those sort of things. It makes it more uniform and bottom line, cheaper to maintain.
Right, okay.
Any other comments, questions?
Just a couple. I don't know that the chief actually deserves a new vehicle, but that's another topic. But I will say that, vehicles are a big deal. And having worked for the county, I know that we've gone to pilot programs where we have actually started leasing because we found those to be more efficient for cost effectiveness and those kind of things. And we're in a pilot program with that now. So I understand, where you're coming from, Lisa. And I think that, perhaps in the future, not necessarily for police vehicles, but like for the victim, there's money available in other areas, but for us to look at those that are going to be low miles, but necessary to look at that avenue. So it is very cost effective.
And Mr. Mayor, if I can, just kind of build on both of those. I don't want to belabor the point, but I feel like our vehicle replacement program is one of the better in probably the nation. And it really starts with a commitment on the part of the council by establishing a strong policy that staff is going to have to adopt and set money aside every year. And that's why most cities don't do that, because they have to fund it to begin with. And there was a lot of foresight several years ago when we had a lot of one-time revenue coming into this organization that we set money aside, and then we've made a commitment annually to depreciate those vehicles like they would in the private sector and set the money aside. And there's no doubt that if you are an organization that's trying to come from behind and get on top of your fleet maintenance issues, and or if you're leasing or purchasing vehicles, there's other alternatives, but we're setting aside money annually and we're paying cash. And so that changes the complexion of the program a little bit. And I just want to assure the council that we do evaluate those other options. I know that Ms. Morris has been evaluating a lease option for some of the vehicles. We've taken out a couple of vehicles out of our fleet, most recently simply because they weren't being used enough, and it was cheaper for us to actually go out and lease a vehicle when we needed it versus having something sit in our yard. And so, but we all ought to be proud of our vehicle replacement program, and we continue to fine tune that every year. And to Terry's point, we don't replace a vehicle just because it's reached 7 years or 80,000 miles or 120,000 miles. We evaluate it and determine whether or not we can make it. And we do have some vehicles that are 2, 3, 4 years past that timeline, depending on the use of that vehicle.
Just to follow up on that, I can remember when the capital budget, each department had to fight to see who could get vehicles because there wasn't money in the budget to buy everything we needed. And when we made that change, it was tremendous. And we used to have to worry about how we're going to fund, how we're going to pay for all this, and now we've accumulated that in the budget. And I think the other thing is, of all the different departments we have, I think we want our police in the finest vehicles, traveling at excessive speeds and whatever, and so I think it's important that you can take one of those vehicles probably and put it over at the golf course to haul something around and get by with it, but when it's used up, I think we've got a good program, and the guys keep looking at it astutely to make sure that one is ready to go when it goes.
Ralph?
And I would concur. I think Larry, what you said about the standards, I think that's real important. I mean, just the way the city maintains the standards in regards to the vehicles, and obviously we wouldn't be able to do it if we weren't able to afford it. And I think in terms of the transport of victims of crime, I really salute the chief for making sure that we have a vehicle that is non-identifiable and provides that comfort, because that's probably the time where that ride that they're taking is the one that the individual's already in crisis, and And so I'm glad that we're able to fund that as well, because I think it'll go a long way.
We've got an extra horse at the rodeo ground, just think.
Oh, yeah, I know about that.
Okay, can I get an ordinance number, please?
Ordinance number 3087, an ordinance of the council of the city of Casa Grande, Arizona, accepting a bid from Santan Auto Partners LLC, DBA Santan Ford, for the purchase of 3 vehicles, authorizing expenditure of public funds in an amount not to exceed $85,511, and authorizing the execution of a contract with or purchase order to Santan Auto Partners, LLC, DBA Santan Ford, in accordance with the terms submitted to the Arizona State bid list.
Mayor McFarland, I move approval of ordinance number 3087 as presented.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Gloria, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember McBride?
Yes.
Councilmember Fitzgibbons?
Yes.
Councilmember Courtson?
Yes.
Councilmember Varela?
Yes.
Councilmember Powell?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Herman?
Yes.
Mayor McFarland?
Yes. Okay, the next item, I3.
Okay. This request is to purchase 2 2018 Ford F-150 pickups from Santan Ford in an amount not to exceed $51,982 for the Public Works Facilities Maintenance and Community Services Parks Maintenance Division. This also is going to utilize that same state contract. We broke these two apart to make it clearer between PD and Public Works and Parks. So, same scenario on this one. Staff reviewed them, said yes, the vehicle should be replaced, and we obtained the quote from Santan for these two. For the upfit part of it, again, just for your own edification to know what these things will roll out for, it's projected that $6,500 is required for the equipment to upfit the facilities maintenance division. This is going to be Nick's truck. For those of you that know Nick, really big guy, needs a whole lot of room and access, and so it'll be upfit for serving his purposes and his guys. The total for that is projected to be $32,491 for the facilities maintenance truck. The unit for parks will require very minimal equipment, toolbox, safety lighting, typical equipment, approximately $2,000 projected for that. So the total for the vehicle for parks is $27,991. In summary, the total cost is projected to be $60,482 for these two vehicles, $51,982 of that being for the vehicle purchase, the remainder for upfit, shall we call it. The money is available in the replacement funds for those two vehicles, and with that, any questions, I'll be happy to swing away.
These are part of our CIP, right?
Correct.
Go over that vehicle replacement program one more time.
Please ignore the man to my right.
I really believe in our vehicle replacement plan, so
Our injection of humor.
we need levity.
Okay, no comments? All right. Gloria, can I get an ordinance number, please?
Ordinance number 3088, an ordinance of the council of the city of Casa Grande, Arizona, accepting a bid from Santan Auto Partners, LLC, DBA Santan Ford, for the purchase of 2 vehicles, authorizing the expenditure of public funds in an amount not to exceed $51,982, and authorizing the execution of a contract with or purchase order to Santan Auto Partners, LLC, DBA Santan Ford, in accordance with the terms submitted to the Arizona State bid list.
Mayor McFarland, I move for the adoption of ordinance number 3088 as presented.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Can I get a roll call vote, please, Gloria?
Stay with you.
Councilmember McBride?
Yes.
Councilmember Fitzgibbons?
Yes.
Councilmember Courtson?
Yes.
Councilmember Varela.
Yes.
Councilmember Powell.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Herman.
Yes.
Mayor McFarland.
Yes. All right, I-4, ordinance number 3089.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Here before we would like to bring to you the Ed Hooper Rodeo Grounds covered seating project. This has been a project that's been in the works for several months now. City selected Capital R Construction to design and build a shade structure over the current seating at the south ends of the Ed Hooper Rodeo Grounds. Funds to pay for this partly will come from the Auction Indian Community, which we received in the form of a grant, and also the approved fiscal year 2019 capital improvement plan. So just to get a point of reference for the scope of this project, this is the location. Again, you see the actual arena on the north end of this property, and right below that is the shade structure, which is north of the existing canopy and the bathrooms and concessions area. And this is what the new covered seating will look like. And then originally, back in, I think it was fiscal year 2017, we budgeted approximately $400,000 for this project in its entirety, and that included the design phase and the construction phase. Over the next couple of fiscal years, we learned that it would be a little bit cheaper to construct this type of facility, so we reduced it down to, I think it was $288,000 in fiscal year 2018. We contracted, like I said, with Capital R Construction to do the design phase, and we spent $23,160 to do the design portion of this project. And now we have received a guaranteed maximum price of $260,000 for this project. Again, we have received $112,000 from Auction Indian Community, and we're extremely grateful for their willingness to donate to this project. It's a project that they believe in and see the value in. The remaining costs will be covered in the fiscal year 2019 capital improvement plan budget. The actual structure itself will cost a little less than $200,000. Staff put in a little bit of contingency, a little bit over $60,000 to do some other upgrades as we see fit, such as lighting under the new structure. If in case it gets dark, we may add lighting there, as well as there may be, if there's capacity, to make some improvements to some of the gates and bucking chutes as we see fit. So. As far as the timeline goes, we think that this project will be completed by the end of 2018, and just in time for our peak rodeo season, which begins in January and pretty much continues every week until April or so. So we see a pretty heavy use out there. So this will fit perfectly in time for that, especially in time for our big Cowboy Days and Autumn Tosh festivities out there. So with that, I'll be open to any questions.
Rusty, you can get it done that time?
Yes, sir.
All right.
All right.
A comment too is that this has been needed for a very long time, and it's my hope that now that we have that it will encourage more usage of the facility out there, because that was one of kind of the downsides of it, especially as you got into March and April and that. So I'm excited about this. I think it's going to be great.
Thank you, Mary.
Mm-hmm.
This is like a dream come true for the posse. We've if you'd ever seen how we began years ago when Larry first got here, and we had droopy lines, and it's really fixed up. Yeah, wooden seats. If you move fast, you got a splinter. You had to be careful.
Or you fell through.
Or you fell through, but we've really upgraded it. But what's been our challenge is like Autumn Tosh. A lot of times you get some rain, and we had 2 days out there. And it also happened in the college rodeo when you had the bleachers full. And it started to rain, and everybody left because you can only sit there on metal seats and get wet for so long. And the ones that were participating or there to support the participate either got wet or left or whatever. This will really bring in more opportunity of events, because some others have been worried. When you schedule at that time of year, it's real iffy, and they want some. We would eventually like to cover the whole arena. have it covered and open-sided. But for right now, this is a huge move forward. We were up at the Cowpunchers Rodeo in Williams this year, and this is the same kind of bleacher I shared with Larry that they have. It works really good. It goes out over the end of the bleacher so the people right at the end don't get wet. And we used to go up there and watch that rodeo, and it would rain, and we'd just smile and laugh, and it was fun to see the muddy cowboys, but you were just as comfortable as you could be. So I think this is really, and it brings a lot. The 10-day event really is probably the most, arguably, the biggest contributor to the Casa Grande economy of any event we do. The hotels are filled up, the restaurants are filled up in February, and so anyway, I obviously am excited about it, and would love to. I would support it. Yes.
Is that an aye?
That's an aye.
I would like to say I'm very glad to see we have a local contractor on this one, so local, in fact, I played offensive line with that guy. True story, but yeah, that made me very happy to see we got a local contractor. I mean, not to reiterate everything, but in the past 2 months, I think I've talked to more people and say, have you seen the rodeo facility they have in Queen Creek? And people have really been impressed by it, and it's something, you know, that we strive to be, like you said, and this is a good first step to that. So I'm really glad to see this because it's going to open it up to, I see like concerts or, you know, some kind of show, you know, stuff like that, monster trucks, whatever we can do. And then, and third, it does not rain a lot in Casa Grande, but it rains a lot when there's a rodeo here.
Yep.
It does. Much needed.
Lisa?
And people have asked me, why are we covering the rodeo? You know, I mean, I got that, and I got with Larry today just to make sure, but, you know, and it's not just about Odomtosh, you know, so some people think it's just that one event that, you know, why we're doing this, but, you know, there are a lot of activities that are going out there throughout the year, and so I think we have to remember that and what it brings to the economy and businesses and restaurants and everything, so yeah, it's definitely something needed. I think, you know, I mean, my question is in the design part. You know, did we look at anything solar in this design? Could we have done anything to get some type of, you know, funding or grants or anything to incorporate any solar into it?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Fitzgibbons, we did briefly look into that. The problem is that there's not really anything to tie it into, and again, it's about penciling it out. We probably wouldn't be able to put a whole lot of solar panels up there to really make the bang for our buck. And with our, as you've seen with our previous solar programs, we've done arrays at a variety of different sites, and that's what helped it pencil out. So while, I mean, we're not canceling out the option of doing it something in the future to put something on top, there's really not a source of electricity that we could tie it into.
Okay.
It's kind of out there by itself.
Yeah, I was just curious if it is.
You know, another thing that some folks don't realize too is that's utilized by our citizens on a day. You know, the kids go out, they practice their roping. That's a family affair that the kids do, and they take that on up to the different championships. So it's not just a planned events and that, it's used on a regular basis.
Yeah, we have
and it's
high school rodeo,
Yeah.
junior high rodeo.
And it's not just rain. To me, my biggest issue has always been the sun, the exposure.
Yeah.
I would have welcomed the rain, so.
Okay. Can I get an ordinance number, please, Gloria?
Ordinance number 3089, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Casa Grande, Arizona, authorizing a construction contract with Capital R Construction to provide the construction of a shade structure, authorizing expenditure of public funds in an amount not to exceed $260,000, and authorizing the execution of a contract.
Mayor McFarland, I thought for sure you were going to do that. For adoption of ordinance number 3089 as presented.
What I would like to, thank you, Mayor.
I was waiting.
I'll second it, yes.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Gloria, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember McBride.
Yes.
Councilmember Fitzgibbons.
Yes.
Councilmember Cortson.
Yes.
Councilmember Varela.
Yes.
Councilmember Powell.
Yes, with the comment that I want to really thank our city manager, Larry Raines, and Mr. Riggs for working really, really hard to get this done in an affordable budget. It took a lot of effort to do that, but we've got a good contractor, and we got a really good leader of our community, so.
Yay. Mayor Pro Tem Herman.
Yes.
Mayor McFarland.
Yes. All right. I-5, ordinance 3090.
Mayor and members of council, tonight staff recommends that the city council approve the use of a CDWG contract vehicle through the National IPA to purchase replacement mobile technology hardware and software in the amount not to exceed $168,747. You may recall that this is year two of a 3-year replacement program that started last year during the CIP process. It was really designed, one, to ensure that by 2020, when Windows 7 becomes obsolete, that we are on the new platform, Windows 10. That's important because the patches that Microsoft releases will no longer be available for reliability and security. And the second piece is because DPS has indicated that if we don't move from Windows 7 to 10, that would be a security risk for things like the sieges access and things like that. The second reason was really to maintain a sustainable 5-year program. These pieces of equipment are designed to last 5 years, and they're warranted for 5 years. And then the last piece is really that impact on operations. So being able to provide data for CAD RMS, for e-citations and those types of things, being able to upgrade the MDCs. We have about 96 units in this program. About 84 of those are public safety between fire and police. In year one, we had anticipated replacing 32 units, and we were able to replace 35 units because of the mix. So based on the departments that use MDCs, which is Planning and Development, Public Works, Fire, and PD, we have 3 different types of MDCs that we use that range anywhere between $3,900 and $6,100. And so there's not a quote on the exact number of units, because what we do is we bring the older unit in-house, and we determine if we can upgrade it to Windows 10, and if we can, then we're able to save some money, and if not, then we go ahead and replace the unit. This year will be largely focused on the police department MDCs, just to accommodate an upgrade in CAD RMS, and then the e-citation project, which this equipment will be used for that program. But with that, that's kind of my recap, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
And that's all within our CIP too, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Yes, Strauss?
Not a question, a comment, but I really appreciate how you have strategic plan linkage, and you put a couple of them in there. I think that'd be a good format for future requests from many other departments, because it really, and I know sitting with you at the CIP, you really focused on that, so thank you very much, I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Selena. Yes.
On the CIP too, it's one that Ralph and I and the mayor said on that, and I'm glad to see that we have all this technology in there now, and you have a plan, because this is something that kind of snuck up on us, I think, but now we have a good solid plan for all this stuff. So, thank you.
Okay. Can we get an ordinance, please?
Ordinance number 3090, an ordinance of the council of the city of Casa Grande, Arizona, accepting a bid from CDW Government LLC for the purchase of mobile technology hardware and software, authorizing the expenditure of public funds in an amount not to exceed $168,747, and authorizing the execution of a contract with or purchase order to CDW Government LLC.
Mayor McFarland, I move approval of ordinance number 3090 as presented.
Second?
Been moved and seconded. Gloria, can I get a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember McBride.
Yes.
Councilmember Fitzgibbon.
Yes.
Councilmember Cortson.
Yes.
Councilmember Varela.
Yes.
Councilmember Powell.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Herman.
Yes.
Mayor McFarland.
Yes. All right. Move to, actually, the only thing left is reports. So we'll move to item N. Did I miss anything, Larry? Didn't miss anything, did I? Okay. Mr. Powell, we'll start with you.
Are you sure I'm going to talk about water? I just wanted to mention a couple of things, but the water issue, if you've read the dispatch and some of the other things that are coming up, is the 32,000 acre feet of water 320,000 acre feet of water that could be taken away. They expect probably within 2 or 3 years. A lot of the powers that be want to take that completely away from agriculture, which would leave Pinal County in a lurch. And if you think about how much we depend, we have $1 billion in receipts that go in from ag each year from Pinal County. If somebody said we got $1 billion industry, can we come and be in your community? But it's something that they're trying to fight right now, and the ag community said we would take half the cut, but we think the others should take half the cut because we didn't cause the problem. The other thing bad, and if you don't have ag, you don't have a backup. If you run out of water, you could always get it from ag, but if the ag's not here, you don't have. If you're out of water, you're out of water. So that's going to be something to really watch, and it's going to affect. We're the most challenged county in the state of Arizona when it comes to water. Hopefully we'll get through this okay. The other thing I wanted to mention, I went to a funeral Saturday for Nate Keaton, and he's a member of the black community here, and he does the kettle corn, Larry, out at the rodeo grounds, and first time I met him, he came down, I said, "I love you, brother," and I was so amazed that the service went for 3.5 hours, but he was so loved by everybody. He helped people. I mean, people got up and told things. He had the people from the heads of the Tohono O'odham Nation come and speak and come to honor him. And I just thought, what a better world we'd be if we had people like Nate who love people, help people, got along with everybody, had a big smile on his face, and my son's named Nate, and he said, "Nate, how you doing? We're brothers from a different mother," and he was such a nice guy, but I've never seen such a huge funeral. That whole Baptist church was filled up. And you couldn't park on the streets. There was a line clear out to the sidewalk around the side of the building for people waiting to get in from both sides. Luckily, I got in and got a seat, and they had people standing all the way around, and the fire department would be aghast to hear this, but they let people come and stand in the aisles, and then they reported that the fire department doesn't allow that to happen, so they had to leave. They couldn't be there for it, but it was huge. It was people from every persuasion and ethnic group that was there, and all of them loved Nate. And I just thought, if there's that much love in the world and we treat each other that way, what a wonderful world it'd be.
I'm mixing it up.
Keep everybody on there.
Anything interesting this weekend, Matt?
Nothing to report.
Really?
The youth commission is going to be delegates at the league conference and carry the flag with Mr. Powell this weekend. So we got that, or this week?
Tomorrow.
No, Wednesday. And I wanted to thank the city departments, especially code enforcement and management. I've had a couple things come to my attention from people, and they got right on it, and things are getting worked out. So, and it's good because I've noticed them, and then, my friends and people called me and says, "Hey, we got a problem. Can you have them look into this?" And I mean, it's really only been probably 2 weeks, the whole process, and we should have closure by the end of this week. So I just want to thank them. Like, people think we don't do that, but we do. When people call us, they take it very seriously, and so does our staff. And so it's getting taken care of pretty quick. So thank you. That's it.
Ralph?
I was checking.
Had the pleasure, Congressman Tom O'Halloran came to the HOHP, and he pinned the Vietnam veterans that were there, 50-year anniversary. So I think there's probably about 15 to 20 veterans who got pinned. Others had been pinned before. And also there was the recognition, and the mayor was there, and he helped with the pinning. The recognition of those who had Purple Hearts, and it was amazing to see how many veterans from Casa Grande had Purple Hearts. Mm-hmm. And the third thing is he presented the U.S. flag that has flown over to Congress to HOHP, and now they're looking at a flagpole somewhere in the downtown in front of their building. Anyway, also I went to the Seeds of Hope, the chamber event, and Mundo Anaya Community Center, and a lot of great activities. But one of the ones that struck me is there's a group of comadres, elder ladies, and they meet once a week, and they do all the sewing and stuff, and they just have a good time and do activities and everything. But
They'd sell you a blanket too, huh?
Yeah, it was just like there, and they did all kinds of stuff. And to Matt, you mentioned the staff. I talked to Larry because we had gotten a call from the Garnett, the residents, in regards to the fountain in the back, and they love to see it from their windows and congregate out there. And Larry's been on it and ordered the motor and everything. And just like you said, Matt, just the response from the city when we get the calls that we're able to do things. And so I appreciate Larry and the city, what you did for that.
Last week, I was invited over at Union High School to meet with John Morris. He's a teacher and the STEM coach. And I met with two amazing young ladies. I mean, these are adults. One is 15 and one is 16. It was Chloe Buchanan and Merlin D'Souza. And they wanted to present to me and show me the different sections of their interest in the STEM, and one was more in the mechanical ideas and making parts, machine parts and that with 3D printers and all, and the other is more on the bio side of it, and that's Merlin's pride and joy and that. So they showed me around there, and the purpose of it was he asked me if I would do a letter in support as a city council person to show that Casa Grande does support STEM, and to what they've applied for the Lemelson MIT program. And what it is it's comprised of high school students, educators, and mentors that receive up to $10,000 each to invent technological solutions to real-world problems of their own choosing. If they're chosen and their projects are chosen, then they will travel to Cambridge, Massachusetts, and present there and then meet with other students. This is the cusp of everything that we talk about, everything that we see. We talk STEM, we talk STEAM, but sometimes I just don't feel that we always walk the walk. And you take a look at these students, and I mean, I was there for an hour and a half, and I could have been there for another 3 hours. We tend to think that if you have students that are interested in math, science, and that are a little bit introverted, non-communicating in these students were so articulate. Their vocabulary amazed me, just their naturalness in that, and I'm going to continue to be their cheerleader and that, and I just wanted to bring that up and show that we have these students. One very basic is you go into part of the area there, and what John has them do is, and a lot of it's teamwork, is they have to design a work table. And so everybody, they have to do it as a team. They design it in that, and they write their name on it. It has to hold all kinds of heavy machinery and that sort of thing. And they're so proud of these tables. I mean, they're amazing tables. And it's the idea that they're working as a team. And these are just amazing students. And I just don't get a big feel that they're as supported as we really need to be supporting them in all ways. So like I say, I'm going to be their cheerleader. Probably every meeting I'm going to have something new to report. But everybody just, hopes, dreams, prayers that they get accepted for this. I'm sure they're going to do something amazing. They were. It was the three, two of the girls, yes. And like I said, they're just excited in that. So I'm very pleased and excited that they asked me to do this. So.
Good. Donna?
I just wanted to thank the Chamber of Commerce. They had a luncheon last Friday on workplace readiness. It was excellent speaker. He did a great job. We had 7 board and commission interviews this afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Powell, for joining the mayor and I for a couple of those, and that just goes to show you how much our community is really getting involved with what we're doing. Upcoming, we've got the mayor's reading program kickoff on the 30th, 5:30 at the downtown library. It's the 20th anniversary of the Reading Club, and we're planning on doing some special things throughout the year. But we're hoping to get 100 volunteers this year, and we have a lot of kids, so people that can give an hour of their time, one day a month, it's a good thing. And then a reminder, elementary school open house is the 29th for the new schools. So that's it.
Lisa?
Speaking of 20th birthdays, the Boys and Girls Club is having their dinner this Saturday, and it's their 20th birthday celebration, so that's at the property. So that ought to be great. I attended the City of Apache Junction's Chronic Homeless Coalition. They are trying to do a strategic plan similar to ours, so they asked the mayor to come, and I know he couldn't go, so I attended and kind of gave them an update on how we got that group together. So they were really excited because, why recreate the wheel when you have something that they can go off of. So they're real excited, wanted to get the details. And then the gentleman from the Department of Housing, he's the coordinator from the Continuum of Care, Continuum of Care coordinator for the State Department of Housing, and he was actually really impressed. He said, he's, for the city of Casa Grande, that no one in the state has really gotten to where we are with this. Just having a strategic plan, having that in place will really help. He thinks that by trying to regionalize it and bringing it into the county, that there could be possible, more funding if we can do it, because rather than fund city by city, he said if we can try to get together with the county and get a plan together, that there's probably some money that they can help us with. So that was really good. But he was really, complimenting and just said, great job, all that stuff. So, and then, and we're all going to be attending the League of Cities this week, so I always look forward to that, learn so much when you go to these. So the next meeting, get ready for all the reports. I'm sure we'll all be sharing what we learned.
They're all waiting with bated breath.
Now King speaks.
Yeah, well, I think between Lisa and Donna, they've covered about half mine, so that's good. We did have the Employee Service Awards last week that I wanted to congratulate. We had 5, 10, 15, 20. Didn't we have a 30 also?
Yes.
Larry?
We have 2 30-year-olds.
2 30-year service awards that we handed out. So the biggest class, I think, was 10. Was it 10? It was huge number of people have been with this city for 10 years. It must have been like 20 of them, probably 20 people or so. Anyway, it was good to see everybody, and congratulations to them. We had a meeting with Lamar about the Promenade Mall, and just to kind of update everybody here in the room, they are going to be probably looking for some PAD amendments to possibly put hotels in out there. So some changes that they're working on. They also have that free rent for a couple of restaurants that are out there. So they're also interested in working with us on some signage and some other stuff. So they really want to put some events out there as well. So they're really going to try and get community back behind the Promenade Mall. So it was good stuff to see. They do think, however, they might have one more tenant that might leave. So just be prepared. I also met with Villa Oasis. I don't know if everybody knows what Villa Oasis is, but it's over in Eloy. And they're kind of where all young people get kicked out of our high schools. They send them over there. It's run by Pinal County. And I had a really good meeting with them, and they're looking for projects. And so I actually turned them on to our homelessness project and gave them some ideas to maybe look at our mission on the south side and do a project that actually takes a look at the mission from an economic, what does it cost to fix it? what it would cost to run it. So they're going to actually do that as a practical exercise. So we'll see what they come up with. The rest of the stuff you guys covered. Don't forget, I'm going to repeat Boys and Girls Club because that's this Sunday. It's important. Or Saturday, excuse me. Saturday at 21, is that right? Yeah. And then the mayor's reading program does start it's on September, what is that then, 19th?
Third Wednesday.
It's the third Wednesday of the month, so that's when it officially starts. You can sign up, you can go online, you can come to our event on the 29th of August as well. So we'll also sign up people there. Last year we had 89 readers. This year we're looking for 100, so... and we do the charter schools too, not just the elementary school districts, so we are hitting the charter schools as well. And that's all I have.